All right, promising this video for Elon Musk, Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, Mr. President, and Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump. If you guys understand what I'm about to present, I think that you could be the three most significant leaders in all of world history. But Elon, here's what's going on. I see you, and you're one of the key leaders in society that I really respect. I really respect the things you've tried to raise awareness on, the things you've invested in, and I really believe you want to see amazing things, the human race grow into really amazing things. So I have to bring up, though, and maybe this is what you're looking for, because I can understand having an alien project to see who can realize these things, but quite often, politically, we freeze up the conversation. We don't actually open up collaboration or opportunity to be involved in the conversation. And we say things like, oh, AI is going to be dangerous. AI will be very dangerous. We should be afraid of AI. It's dangerous. And I believe when you're only doing that, that's freezing up the conversation. And it's questionable whether or not that's intentionally done to freeze up the conversation and prolong your opportunity to develop things. And sometimes that's done with public funds. And so people are okay with being taxed and having their money taken away and put into a company that hasn't developed a solution yet, and they're not opening up any access to be involved in all of that opportunity that's being financed by public funds that the public is actually buying. Okay? So maybe, I was going to skip ahead there in my notes here. So that's the difference, freezing up the conversation versus follow through on ethical leadership. On ethical leadership, we don't talk about being afraid of AI. We talk about these very complex, sophisticated approaches to security. Now, you're working on Starlink, and if we were working on a very sophisticated approach for society, one of the things you'd be thinking about while you're building Starlink is how do we have the necessary radar density? Maybe we don't necessarily need that because there's this tagging that can go out with drones, just like it does over the airline industry. Maybe that's not the best frequency to do that communication or having those tags go out such that you can see, hey, this thing flying through the sky is emitting this tag, and we're giving it that tag because the compiler, every single compiler in the world needs to work with Cyberforce. We are in an age where you can't have people developing code and building drones that could be like this, that can travel and at a very high rate of speed and could potentially have a bomb, and it can fly into somebody's living room and blow up, and it would blow up sufficiently enough that it would destroy all of this evidence, or most of it. It would be probably be hard to track some of that down. You could lose a lot of that most of the time. And so what you need to do is, if you can emit a tag and you have a Cyberforce that's working with compilers, one of the things you can do with compilers is you can analyze what kind of code and what kind of algorithms are being run on that device. And so compilers must classify threat levels of algorithms. This must be done in a fairly transparent way, or we aren't watching the dangers. And so in the age of specific AI features, required components on startup processes and specific library control is all required. So these IDEs, their library, they have to work with the company. And the Cyberforce has to understand the different features this language is capable of incorporating into the platform. And it has to classify different compiler algorithmic threat detection that can happen related to that. It has to be thinking about all of those things. You have to have a Cyberforce officer working with each of these companies, and they have to study specifically that platform, but be on a different team. Okay? And so we need this kind of an operational efficiency in society. We need that kind of compartmentalization. Now you can start talking about these drones. Specifically, every time somebody compiles code, that identity gets logged to a cloud. This Cyberforce would have a specific cloud that's looking at threat detection like this, specific for drones. And it's going to work together with these different compilers such that whenever any code is compiled, it's analyzing different types of algorithms. You can definitely detect if something is running an algorithm capable of detecting gravity and drop and all of these different things. And you can detect if something's a drone like this using a shortwave communication system and a device that's talking to it, or it's being driven completely algorithmically, seeking out a GPS coordinate, a specific target, and it's moving at a high rate of speed, and it can cover a lot of ground really quickly. And so automatically when this drone gets built and that code gets created, You have a system where, hey, I'm gonna be watching what code is on this, and typically it's gonna depend. Maybe people have a way of getting the target onto this system without the code, knowing what that target might be at the time. And so all these things, how do you detect that? Well, if this thing has a system on board and it's got specific library features for the processor that can possibly be used for a drone, if our industry makes sure this security exists, then we can determine as this drone is flying through the sky that it's using these kinds of algorithms and it's moving at a high rate of speed, so it must use a more dangerous tag on this network. It sends this dangerous tag through this network and alerts this specific cyber force, and they start looking into some of the history. As soon as this drone gets compiled, and as soon as it takes to the sky and it's in this dangerous category, you have a initial, when the code gets compiled, you can't look at every single thing, but when a drone is flying, you can definitely say, hey, this drone, go check this out. Something's going on with this drone, and you for sure know which identity is associated with that code already, and some of the components that get purchased. If you do this modular verification of components, required components on startup, you can verify whether or not they're in compliance with these different components. And so you could even make it such that if people weren't using these components, you wouldn't be able to get a drone on the network. And so this makes it easier for people to police. Only people who are really, really trying hard are going to be able to at all have a chance of... I try to think about, if you're building different drones and you want to try to build this to target somebody, what are the different ways that we can approach that? And this is what I mean, the difference between freezing up the conversation and really leading it, Elon. So I get to say my resume, because I understand these things. While you have tremendous qualifications and have done amazing things in life, I had a different life story and a different set of circumstances that determined how I could even pursue development. And that affected me pretty deeply, and as a result, I don't think I'm the most stable person for key jobs, but I can definitely say I have this unique resume and this unique ability to realize it's very irresponsible to freeze up these conversations when there's so much more to it. And so then people are just worried, and they live in fear, and they don't have as many conversations as they could have otherwise. And it's a very significant problem in society, because we aren't a responsible government of the people looking at these things securely if we're not operating in these ways. So you might have been coached, Elon, to say maybe there's an alien civilization out there somewhere and they're trying to make contact and we're just not able to realize it yet. Maybe you were coached into that specifically for this opportunity, because an advanced civilization operating amongst the stars is going to care about significant cognitive constructs on their spaceship. They're going to want to keep each other in a good place and want to understand one another as a key priority. So that's going to be something that they do. And they're going to be talking about these advanced architectures that power these spaceships, how those security systems work so they feel secure on that ship. Once you get to the point where you can literally fly to another star in an efficient way, you have spaceships that you can fly into planets and destroy all life on that planet. You have that technology. And so, out of military need, the thing that arises as the most lasting military strategy in the universe is convincing people it's difficult, prohibitively difficult, to go to another star. You won't see returns on investment for many generations because of time dilation and things like this. And of course, if you're not thinking about architecture in all of these ways, then you can build architecture that will give experimental physicists the data that you want them to believe is real. And only if you think about this entire ecosystem can you realize the way a little bit of code can be run, and it can look at whatever code you're trying to run, and it can realize, hey, they're trying to do this experiment. I'm going to give them this data. Because that fits this very critical security need. Because otherwise we'd have people just going to different planets and developing all kinds of AI, and we'd have crazy wars of the worlds. That's what we would have. And so the most lasting, because people would just say, I don't want to deal with working with each other, I'm just going to go to another planet. And so that would be more likely. You would have more of that culture develop, which is dangerous. You need to be working together more, like this. Otherwise, you'll have a situation where you could have crazy wars of the worlds. It's better to have a cosmic kingdom that works together and tries to keep these lessons close to heart. So you could have 4 planets in a close enough region, and they know they need to operate this way. It's the most important military security strategy there is. So we have to come up with a way of letting a nation decide it wants to take certain systems apart, or just transition because they know, hey, there's no better way to hand off certain technologies other than giving the people an opportunity to compete over it. Otherwise, eventually the technology is perfect, and how do you hand it off? You just try to hand it off to your kids forever? Try to argue which one of your kids is most ethical? Geez, that's going to make all kinds of competitions that get people to want to attack each other in all of these ways. But if you're trying to do a system where you realize who comes to the table with really, really brilliant ideas, and you reward them and you use the equities as a way of safeguarding platforms, and the person who holds those equities is incentivized for working so difficultly or putting in so much effort to understand these very difficult concepts and be the leader that really can protect that platform. And so they are thus responsible for managing those equities. You need to have a set of equities that is managed for investment and has different rules, and a set of equities that is for protecting that platform. And it's very critical that those equities are handed off in a very specific way. Otherwise, you start to have people believe it's corrupt and all of these things, and it addles your culture, it puts you in a dangerous spot. Furthermore, I mean, if I go through a huge percentage of my life and my relationships suffer because I'm dumping this kind of work into things, this kind of effort into things, I want to get to a point in my life where I don't have to be like that anymore and I can focus on family. Really, and really enjoy that. Because that's a full and complete life experience, and I know I've already added so many things, and in fact the way you create the best culture and add the most is having the willingness to hand certain things off. And so this all might be part of this test for you, Elon, to see if you were coached to say specifically, there might be alien civilizations out there and we just don't realize it yet. And you're the one that's being tested because you're supposed to be able to realize from this experiment that this is very clearly what's happening, and this is very clearly the set of things that would hold an advanced civilization together. And if you had a lasting military strategy in the universe, it would be about specifically these things so you don't have wars of the worlds. And so you can maximize the quality of the human condition. Certainly you would have all of those things as a close-to-heart objective. So that's my conversation for you, Elon. That was 12 minutes. Now let's go into Mr. Joe Biden. Mr. Joe Biden, Mr. President, sir, I think you are an incredibly charismatic leader. I wish I had some of the charisma that you have. I really do. And you care deeply about family issues. The way you stood up for your son, I commend that. I'm trying to stand up for others in those complex situations and families who want to help people in those complex situations, because there are a lot of significant cognitive constructs which are hard to catch, and we'd have to have a very specific system that feels very open and passive and more like you're modeling the reflection process individually, but you are having different expertise flow to that through guided reflections and specific role model dissections. And there are ways that as clever psychologists, we work with technologists to develop a system where you can flag these things, but you have to have fields working together, and you have to have cross-pollination of ideas as a key objective there. And so, Mr. Joe Biden, Mr. President, sir, if you could enable a culture, if you were to understand this plan, in some of my videos that I have out there, I know some of them are pretty unorganized and others can do a better job. I've dealt with some pretty overwhelming things here, and I'm still trying to get this job done. But if you understand these things, I firmly believe you could enable a culture of such amazing peaceful prosperity among nations that you will be one of the most significant leaders in all of history forever. Because you helped to enable this, you helped to work to recognize what these operational strategies, how they affect one another, how they affect development, how they affect access to opportunity, how they affect whether or not the culture can even be involved in trusting what's being developed. Because you can't say you're responsibly telling people what they're buying as a politician. Think about that. You're not responsibly, to the best of your ability, and I realize based upon existing systems and structures, you can argue you're doing the best of your ability, and that America had a really amazing system to try to recognize people who are doing that. You can say that. That's definitely true. I agree with you in those ways, certainly. But it is true that we can do this a lot better now, and we have an ethical responsibility to do this. Otherwise, we're going to be in a situation where people don't really know what they're buying. People don't know what's really... There's no real competition to have the most secure network. I went to a police agency and wanted to file a police report in Denver, and I figured out police agencies, they claim it's just about jurisdiction, but as far as I'm concerned, you can file a police report anywhere. You should have that ability. You should be able to go to a police station, and if a crime happened, they should be able to do an initial report for you, no matter what police station it is. Now, yes, that should flow to the correct police station where jurisdiction can be involved, and that other police station should flag whether or not they should reach out maybe to the FBI or some other agency such that it's not just one police station that's determining that. And you can very easily have corrupt networks exist that way. Okay? So Joe Biden, you should have a serious interest in that, in understanding that, and understanding how all these systems exist, and why is it that we claim to be a government of the people, but we're arguing to not work together in every way such that even when it's with something as important as law and justice, we can't even do an initial, hey, is reporting the crime the same? Is it advantageous to make a system where one police station can report a crime and fill out a police report for somebody that happened in another region? Because in fact, they might realize, hey, based upon this police report, this might be something I should actually hand off to the FBI. And otherwise, if it's just this police station that makes this decision, and you don't ever have this exactly what you have in the American system, where you distribute the power, you have separation of powers, and right now you're consolidating that power in one of the most important industries for law and justice. Why is that? That doesn't seem like that's the best system. I understand that the punishments are different, and whether or not something is a crime can be different sometimes, but a lot of the time, it's perfectly valid. It's actually a stronger system if you can go to any police station and file a police report, and it's not just one police station that decides whether or not there's relevant content there to reach out to the FBI. That should be a citizen, an automatic right that we make it a priority, that somebody can reach out for help in that way and get help. Okay? Now, Trump, here's what I want to finish with. Joe Biden also. Mr. Biden, one of the ways that you succeed at this is you recognize that the Trumps did have this amazing brand for helping to recognize people who try to help grow their company, and that's a great concept that we should promote in society. And so to honor the Trumps, and you will win a landslide victory, and Trump will want to work with you if you do a good job representing this. Because Mr. Trump is going to understand this key statement, and this is what I want him to do for us, Joe. Mr. Biden, I should maybe not be on a first name basis with you, Mr. President, sorry. But Trump, Mr. Trump, former President Trump, I need you to make Zig Ziglar's case to all these businesses that the best way to get to where you want to be is by helping others get to where they want to be. And that's what this system is all about. And either businesses don't actually care about the philosophy of Zig Ziglar. The best way to get to where you want to be is by helping others get to where they want to be. And either you can get the nation to realize they don't believe in that kind of quality, that Zig Ziglar quality. They don't believe in that. And that's a very important thing. And that's what your The Apprentice brand was about. The best way to get to where you want to be is by helping others get to where they want to be. And you made a brand about that, a brand strategy about that. Now there may be some ways you could do that even better by helping all of these other nations and transitioning that brand. And there's a way you can protect that opportunity for your children to still get honored for the way they helped that brand be noticed. And you continue to run The Apprentice as a family periodically as you want to, and that helps society remember what the Trumps did, even though it's technically the active president that gets to decide on this contracting. That is the best system, because you want that team, you want people to be able to build a strong team. And you don't want to have this divisive nature. So you do want President Biden to be the one who's in charge of contracting these key network pieces. Now again, Mike Rowe's dirty jobs, he could be the inspiration for this workforce heroes layer. That's the truth. And so, over time, could he continue to recognize that those people, those networks, could we try to recognize that those networks added that really valuable structure to society? Yeah, absolutely. There are ways you can maintain the tie to those brands, but still let the market for this set of initiatives with this company be driven entirely by that other set of things. And so that's really what you can do here. You have this tremendous opportunity to really cement these ideals in society, and your brand can be recognized for the things they brought to the table, and you still let this team structure. You recognize that it's important to be this government of the people and operate in these ways. But then, the way that I see it, 10% of this strategic pivot brand, and this gets determined every year, or every political cycle it would be. You don't want to inconvenience these business leaders too much. But it is helping them out tremendously to have this platform. And I've looked into some different ways. I know there are different CEO conventions that happen around the world. annually, and you don't have to have just a single board organized to set these priorities along with the government. You can have networks of industries, determine some objectives for their industry, and then you have the politicians. So you have different ways the boards can come together and create goals alongside the government. And the goal for the government is to try to help manage the regulation and protect and streamline the regulation and make sure the population is aware of what we're buying and what we're deciding on. That's what strategic pivot is really trying to do. And so there's tremendous opportunity to include people in all these things that we're developing. And you can represent each of the things you all cared so much to promote in the world by working together in these ways. Elon, you would be working with Facebook, primarily, Quora, Reddit, and LinkedIn. Those are the key social media brands. I know TechCrunch has a little bit of a social media feel, but they're more about creating articles to study that specific niche, and then you open up that market in these specific ways, which I have described in other videos. But if you guys understand, if your teams can understand this opportunity, you can't build a more safe, secure world with more access to opportunity any other way than having these structures with strategic pivot that go into the infrastructures that we're developing, so that people can really follow along with those. And there are things you have to take into account with whether or not somebody really understands what's being discussed, and whether or not they're fairly objecting. And if we're all busy people, we want to know the people. We want to be able to flag and pay attention to the people who are working the hardest first. That's a fair thing. That's a scientific system, and you've positioned it such that different companies can try to market different understandings of the science. And that's fine. And you create the economy around that. There's so much opportunity, and the ways this can flow into hybrid learning systems and keep people engaged with relevant learning content. It's one of the most key things all teachers are interested in. And you can make that fairly streamlined for them. But yeah, we have to think about things in these pieces. Here's this one example of a user interface. Here are some key things that it can include. But other people, if they can do this better, should have the opportunity to try and do that. Absolutely. Now, should I get to protect it for 5 years or something? Yeah, but we can move more quickly with our patent authority, and I can just try to be really competitive here. And I don't even know if I really like launching it with just one company involved in any one of these development areas, because it's better to see more collaboration and more cross-pollination of ideas. You build a stronger society. There's more opportunity for recruitment. People who don't have access to specific types of role models would be able to see how other people are succeeding. And I was out longboarding the other day, and there was a girl named Kyrie, and Kyrie, I can't remember exactly, but she's interested in robotics. And you can open up the most advanced opportunity to experiment with robotics only if you're thinking about all these other security features that will allow that to be safe. So we have to think about things like that. We have to start developing platforms like this, where you have a psychology bridge. And again, each one of the social medias or channels into this can design this a little bit differently, but you're going to want to have these goals. You're going to want to have suggested reflective journals, and you could open this up into a nav menu. So you have maybe an icon here that's selected reflective journals, and one here that's relationship advice or just articles. And then you can kind of have like a streamlined basic setting that merges content. So it's kind of looking at your reflective journals, and it's also giving you suggested advice articles. So there are different ways you can build a system like that. And so here's maybe a preview of a reflective journal, but if I click on this reflective journals button over here or icon over here, it actually opens up some navigation charts with different types of significant cognitive structures or life experiences that you can start to narrow down what kind of guided reflection you want to find. Maybe it's failing in a relationship, feeling like you failed in a relationship in a moment, and you want to reflect on how did you end up failing like that, and so you can get all of these things to help streamline and notice when people are under these significant cognitive constructs. And sometimes you get way down here with life and being affected by these things. You have to sort back through it and realize the ways it affected you through time. But if we have a system like this, people are going to be on their toes, aware of that, more likely. And so you just have to think about how you best position a central entity to manage all the security such that it's most efficient for various industries to be able to build this, an opportunity to collaborate on this. Facebook might want to make its own interface. All the social medias might want to make their own interface. Facebook is the one that I think is most significant in this arena. I'm not sure. Maybe Strategic Pivot, or I'm sorry, Twitter might not, or X.com might not want to do this like this. And so they might want to implement it a slightly different way. And that's totally fine. Maybe they can build a stronger user interface that's more intuitive and it's easier to navigate. That's awesome. If RankKings or one of these other companies create a better user interface, yeah, then, and they can go through a specific website. Now, some company that's a specific behavioral health brand goes through a company like RankKings to develop them a website. RankKings knows that there's this central layer that standardizes the security for all these key platform integrations for this product in the market. And now you have the opportunity for all this experimentation in the marketplace to happen, and it's happening in the most secure way it possibly can. Not every company has different security and has access to the data in different ways. You've standardized that. That's part of the key thing for security. It's part of the key thing for opening up collaboration on free markets too. So you have to talk about the objectives for the market, and then you have to let people try to be the better solution in that market. Otherwise, you don't have free markets. So I think these are all the cosmic lessons. And I think certainly there's a possibility to enable world peace more so than any other thing through this set of strategies and this set of understandings. It's certainly the way that will create more opportunity for role model engagement and allow more people who might be affected by more life experiences more chances to see awesome things to chase after and understand how to succeed at that, despite their limited role model networks they might have at home or in their personal sphere. And that's an important thing. You don't want a society that has people acting like they're so much more responsible, figuring things out, but they aren't trying to help the population understand the things that they're figuring out. In fact, they're making the population feel bad, and then there's all this divisive stuff. And that's not what we want to do. We want a culture that's more about, hey, we have these goals and we want to be better, and if you protect the flexibility in the marketplace, we can talk about more things. And we'll figure things out faster. And in conclusion, I would love to just be in middle management anywhere, in any one of these companies. Because it's more important to just be involved, and for me to maintain some balance in my life and stay healthy, than for me to dump myself into this and try to be the most amazing thing in every one of these categories I possibly could. Here's an overarching plan. Here's lots of opportunity for others to succeed at perfecting these different pieces. One of the key pieces that would be most interesting to perfect is this continuous improvement CI squared brand. This is really a UPC brand, is what I see it as. But what is it that you really want to do with businesses with their product feedback? You want to do continuous improvement activities for them. If you can build a system where a lot of people have a similar idea, and you can see which ones of those people came to the table at what time and which had which pieces of the idea, you can reward them for that. And you don't have to sort through every single one idea. You can have a system where the entire population can comment on things, and you develop algorithmic structures for product managers to get a target list. Here's what, of all the 100,000 people talking about ways to improve your product, here are the core things that are repeated most frequently amongst those people. And you can probably even build it such that you click on those things and you figure out which person had what percent of the idea at what time. And do you see how you can then, as a product manager, reach out to somebody and say, wow, this person had a great idea. It saved our company this much money. We're going to give them this badge through this continuous innovation and implementation brand that will tie to their resume. And it'll be a very official thing. Okay? Super cool ways you can open up the economy like that. But you got to organize for it. And you can have really cool things kind of function like this. So in conclusion, this is the most significant path to world peace. Lasting prosperity in the universe is understanding specifically these things, and why keeping these lessons close to heart is so phenomenally important and beyond priceless. Thank you all. God bless. I wish us all the best in these coming years and success in these endeavors.